and welcome to the final episode of the Built Environment Marketing Show for 2024. It's a show that's still hosted by me, Ayo Abbas, and I'm a marketing consultant, speaker and trainer, and I run my own firm called Abbas Marketing. You can find out more about me and my work at www.abbasmarketing.com. Anyway, this year has been a fun one and pretty busy, I do have to say. And I've still managed to get a fair few episodes out, both solo and interviews. I now try and do a split between the two, and also I do kind of throw in a few kind of special mini-series along the way as well. So I hope you enjoy it all. And in case you don't know, the Built Environment Marketing Show is an independent podcast that I host, script and produce all by myself. I do work with an editor called James Eady who does the sound, which kind of gets it all sounding a lot more professional, which is really, really important. But what's interesting about the show is that I do genuinely find guests whose work I love, and then I literally reach out to them and invite them to come on. And then most of the time they say yes, which is a good thing. I like to choose, I guess, topics that interest me at the moment and what's going on in the news, and find out the types of things that I think people will find useful. And for me, I guess I do it because I love podcasts and I love the industry and I love talking about marketing. And to be honest, I love doing it, and it does take quite a lot of time, but it's something that I enjoy. So I definitely still put my heart into this. This episode is a bit of a roller coaster of things. So it's going to kick off with some data and digits where I look at the stats about the show. Then I'm going to pull out some of the highlights and clips from the year so that we can kind of have a bit of a recap, and you can head out and listen to some new episodes if you haven't heard them all during the year. I'm also going to talk about what I think the trends are for 2025, because I think that's quite important. Then I'll give a quick kind of overview of where I'm taking the show next year, and maybe a couple of cheeky outtakes at the end. So anyway, hope you enjoy it, and see you soon. Data and digits. So this year I had downloads of about 3,456 episodes across all episodes that I have out in the podcast. So now we're up to 80 episodes alive. And with this one, it'll be 81, I think. So yeah, in terms of downloads, when you look at kind of the huge kind of Joe Rogans or even the business of architecture, yes, it is relatively small, but actually it's perfectly formed for what I do. I like to keep my podcast super niche, like my business as well. So it literally does focus on built environment marketing. You're never going to find me talking about the joys or ins and outs of architecture, because I'm not an architect. I'm a marketeer. So that's what I like to focus on. And in terms of episodes this year, I released 19 episodes, which includes a couple of repurposed ones from elsewhere, there was one around kind of events and also one around UK Reef as well with Karen Woolley. And in terms of what we've also shared, I talked about some of the kind of topics that I kind of think are really relevant and current. And I also had some of the lives that I do with Stacey Meadwell once a month for the B2B comms breakdown. I turned some of those into podcast episodes as well. Like I said, my downloads almost topped 3,500 this year. I had 13 guests on the show, and total downloads for the whole show overall in 4.5 years was 16,000. So pretty happy with that. Now on to my top 5 episodes. The top episode this year was the hidden features of LinkedIn, which I did with Stacey Meadwell. This was repurposed from one of our B2B comms breakdown lives. It was all about how you can get the most out of LinkedIn. So think about things like LinkedIn audio, LinkedIn events, LinkedIn lives, newsletters. Many of these features people haven't actually heard of, let alone use. So well worth checking this one out. In second place came Introducing AI, which was a real practical episode with myself, Amy Walters and Jessica Barrett, where we really looked at the use cases for AI and how you could get really practical with it in terms of your graphic design, your strategy, and also your content. So go back and check that one out. It came out in February this year even. In third place came Sadie Morgan. So I went to their offices at DRMM over summer, I think, and I got to interview Sadie, and it was just an absolute delight. And we talked about how she found her voice to spark change, and it was just a really lovely interview to do. In fourth place was my kind of top, I guess, solo episode, which was all around messaging, targeting and positioning. Now, what I found in the kind of this year is really a lot of the problems that businesses have faced. If we kind of look at the messaging, targeting and positioning, we can really reframe what they're doing and actually get a lot more success. So it's really worth checking that episode out. And in fifth place came the event business development tips one with Karen Willey, which again was repurposed from UK Reef the previous year, but it's a complete goldmine in what to do if you're getting out and about. Also, a quick shout out for the episode that came out last month with Nina Farrell and Emma Hutton, because that actually came in sixth place in just a month. So amazing what happens when people share it on their channels as well. So thank you so much for that. But as I do always say, numbers aren't everything. My podcast actually gives me so many other benefits that I guess are really kind of insurmountable. So things like when I'm out and about, people do come up to me and say, I love listening to your show. They know who I am. I guess they know, like, and trust me far more. So those metrics, which are a lot more kind of less quantifiable, are so important as well. And they do actually bring me opportunities. I think by talking and sharing my voice on here, but also on the lives that I do on LinkedIn and things, they've also helped me to secure more work. So that's been really, really useful as well and helped position me as a consultant. So yes, numbers aren't everything. Now, I guess in terms of the podcast itself, in terms of the content I put out and the themes, it's worth saying that, some of the kind of big topics and kind of umbrella topics I've looked at are things like, there's been a lot around digital and innovation and things like AI and LinkedIn features, all of those things that kind of really give you practical digital marketing advice, which I think we need to get better at as an industry. I've also done a lot around kind of leadership, strategic episodes, which look at kind of leadership, strategy and brand, which again, I just think is so, so important. And in many respects, we might be neglecting in terms of the work that we do. And actually over summer, I managed to release a kind of practical snacks, really practical mini series, which is all about things like email, SEO, homepage, website, homepage optimization, loads and loads of kind of practical stuff. So yes, that was a lot of fun. I also did a podcast kind of crossover episode with John Clayton where he interviewed me and vice versa. And that was so much fun to do. So I'll definitely try and do more of those next year. Oh yes, and for our 4th birthday this year, what we did was do a special episode, which is where I got voice notes from different people giving their tips for what they would do for a practice starting out. So that's a fun one to listen to as well. And thanks so much to everyone who kind of sent in clips for that. So that's a kind of rundown on the data and the digits and the stories behind what happened with the show this year. Now it's going to be time for the themes and clips. Hi, it's Ayo here, and I just wanted to interrupt the show quickly to say a bit more about what I do. I'm a digitally led marketing consultant, and I specialise in working with built environment firms just like yours. I think there's so much more that AEC firms can do to make the most of the digital marketing opportunity. And if it's something that you would like to explore working with me, how to make the best of online and in-person worlds, then do get in touch. Email me at Ayo, which is AYO, at abbasmarketing.com, and let's have a chat. Leadership and strategy. Let's kick off this segment with Julia Nichols from the birthday episode that happened in July.
I would say my one tip is to make sure that you're thinking strategically, because I feel like long-term thinking is often something that falls to the bottom of a to-do list while you focus on the kind of day-to-day demands. And I also think it's something that some people find an uncomfortable aspect of their business, and so they kind of ignore it until their project pipeline looks a bit sketchy. But for me, all communications activity should be strategic. What I mean by that is supporting your future goals by making meaningful connections with the people you want to be working with. And if you're not sort of working towards a plan, you risk not being recognized in your specific sector, not being front of mind for upcoming opportunities, failing to highlight how your skills can support clients, and not using your time effectively. So for me, it's really crucial to be thinking long-term strategically from the start.
And now let's move on to Fliss Childs.
Okay, so I think without clear strategy, your work can just fall through the cracks. So everybody can do lots and lots of output, lots of marketing, lots of comms, and throw it out there all the time. But if you haven't got it sort of consistent, and if it's not hitting what you're trying to, it just won't have any impact. So what I try and do is understand what makes us unique as a practice. But fundamentally, what do our clients and collaborators and the people we're trying to sort of get the attention of, what do they really want to hear? So to do that, you've got to do your research and you've got to understand your market. So I think it's really important to invest time in scanning the horizons, understanding the shifts, what's going to happen. Just before we got the new government in, I spent quite a long time looking at the Labour Party manifesto and thinking, right, what's going to change and how are we going to align ourselves? And, what are people going to be talking about? Where's the money going? What's the conversations that are going to be had? And I think if you have all that together and you have that, then you can have a clear strategy about where you want to go, because it's very easy to put content out about stuff that's internally important, but it doesn't really work unless you're talking about what people want to hear.
And John Clayton shares why strategy is important.
I would say that having a strategy is really important. Having a marketing strategy that is aligned with your business goals and the type of customers that you want to work with, the number of new projects or clients that you need to secure each year.
And I share why I think messaging, targeting and positioning is a game changer for all businesses. So messaging, targeting and positioning. Your messaging is about finding the reasons why and what you want to say and what your offer is. Targeting is very much about figuring out who you are talking to, why you're talking to them, and also how your solution addresses their problems. Finally, your positioning is about where are you in relation to the market and your competition. And let's close out this segment with Amy Edwards sharing why you need to understand your audience, and Pascal Scherer talking about finding your own superpower.
Hi, this is Amy from Markedly. My one tip for marketing for practices starting out today would be to really understand your audience well before you start any of your marketing activities. And the reason I say that is because it allows you to position yourself right in the market. It allows you to choose the right platforms to use to be able to market your practice. And it also allows you to use the right tone of voice so that you know that you're talking to the right audience so that you can attract the right types of jobs to your practice. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Pascal, and my marketing tip for any practice starting out is to be absolutely focused on your superpower. What makes you unique? What makes you stand out? What can you do better than anybody else?
Branding and storytelling. Branding and storytelling is something that I covered a lot this year. It's one of those topics that we're always going to keep coming back to. It's a key element of marketing as it really helps you define who you are and ties closely with your overall kind of business strategy and goals. So let's kick this section off with Emma Hutton giving a good roundup of what a brand strategy is.
I mean, brand strategy is relevant to absolutely anyone and everyone who has a business. We always brand strategy, we just say it's this foundational piece. It's the piece that everything else stems from and grows from. So a good brand strategy is the foundation basically for how you show up in the world. And that relates to architects because architects have a business and they're trying to sell their services. So the key thing about brand strategy is asking the questions: who you are, what do you stand for, what are your values, how do you want to be perceived in many ways is the root of brand strategy. So it matters to architects because determining who you are, what you have to say, your values, how you show up in the world is how you set yourself apart.
And then Emma shares why there's a huge connection between brand and storytelling.
So the connection between brand and storytelling is you can't really do authentic storytelling. You can't tell a story without having done the foundational brand work because your brand is your why, right? It's who you are. It's why you exist. It's what you're about. The storytelling is the action of that. It's the how. It's how you say it, how you show it, all this work that you've done in that foundational piece. So the two are to have authentic storytelling, to actually go out there and have a great website that communicates all of these things, that feeds into your socials, that works across every kind of communication touch point, whether that's a film, whether it's, as I said, going out and actually speaking to someone. That's storytelling. And that all stems from whatever you have, decided upon in that foundational stage, in the brand stage, that who you are, what you care about, what's your vision, what's your mission. Those values are absolutely essential when it comes to the storytelling piece, because it's a great way to, you form all these hooks that come from the brand that then feed into the storytelling.
And remember, brands just aren't for companies, they're also for people too. Sadie Morgan now is going to share a bit about her personal brand and how she's built that.
At the time, I was on the council of the Architectural Association and gave an impassioned speech. I can't remember what about. And then somebody came up to me and said, you've got to be the next president, And anyway, I had this sort of extraordinary situation where I was made the president of the Architectural Association, and at that time I was the youngest and second only woman in 100 and something years history.
Gosh.
150 years history. And I think that I suddenly thought, actually, I have a responsibility. Yeah. I can't keep saying, this is too difficult. I don't really like public speaking. I'm not good at it. Let Alex do it.
This is Alex's job. It's not.
Yeah,
you've got something to say.
Yeah. And also, there aren't, at that time, luckily, we're getting better at it. I mean, we're still nowhere near where we need to be. But, at the time, there were very few female, directors of practices, very few female, kind of speakers.
AI and tech. Technology and AI isn't going away. We can choose to put our heads in the sand and try to shut it out. But really, to stay ahead as marketers, I really think we need to understand the use cases for AI and technology and where it can help us to do our jobs better. And for me, the key thing to watch out for is that it's all changing so fast. So keeping up with what's improving, some tools that were rubbish 18 months ago. For this episode, I had an interview with Amy Waters and Jessica Barrett, where we talked about AI and technology from a strategy, from a content and communications, and also from a graphics perspective. Here's some clips from that. Let's kick off with Amy.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that a lot of people are scared to use. And so just getting started is great. And the more that you use and get started with it, the more you discover the ways that it's going to be helpful for you.
And then on to me talking about marketing being an assistant. I think it's worth some people investing into it if you see it as your marketing assistant. So someone that, something that can help you take away, I guess, the repetitive strain. I was reading up this morning and, we do a lot of, I guess we waste a lot of time doing mundane tasks in marketing, don't we? Uploading this, looking for the right contacts or whatever. And it's like, how can we do this quicker and faster and better? And I think there's a lot of tools out there that we're not using or making the most of that could actually help us to do our jobs a lot quicker. And I guess release us from some of the kind of mundane stuff and actually start doing a more, dare I say it, fun strategic stuff. And then a mini masterclass from Jess about how she uses AI for her PR work.
I always tell chat who it is. I say you're an expert copywriter or you're a PR specialist and give it that background, then it knows exactly where it's coming from. I try and give it a word count limit, but chat's not great at sticking to word counts. It is quite good at sticking to tone, I think. So often once you nail your corporate branding and tone of voice, it's really good at adhering to that. If you have a couple of words that you know that you're corporate and friendly, then it can become really consistent. And that's one thing that we found is that it helps all of our content become consistent. Because sometimes when you've got multiple people in your in-house team, you've all got slightly different interpretations of what your tone of voice is. So it's helped us a lot with being consistent and on brand.
Content marketing. With a new incoming government and a budget, it felt apt to do an episode looking at how you can kind of use content marketing and your content strategy to help align you with the government. So this one is definitely worth sharing and reviewing as you're trying to figure out your marketing strategy for next year. So let's kick off with Stacey Meadwell.
But I think key is about offering solutions, and because it's very easy to get around a table and everybody to talk about where all the problems are, but where the real value is being the person who can actually come up with ideas, not just, not solutions, but also how to move things forward and how to, to get past the problems. But you've got to be around the table. If you're not around the table, you're not part of that conversation.
And then on to me talking about how you can align your marketing so that you can secure more of the pie from the government. For example, it's understanding, I guess, which areas of the story and the pie that are, which you want to focus on. And then thinking, right, who is talking about these issues? So you've got publications. So, for example, the AJ over the past few years has very much been about retrofit, not knocking buildings down. So you've got people like that who are championing those causes. So who's championing those issues? So some of the magazines might be doing things, some of the associations. You've got people like campaigning groups like the London Society looking at, toilets and infrastructure or things like that. So you've got to just look at who is talking about these issues and these debates. And finally, Sharon talks a bit about housing and communications.
There's not one silver bullet that's going to deliver the housing. And I know that we're focusing on housing here. It's going to be made up of a lot of different ways of getting the housing. So it might be retrofitting a lot of housing so that they can come back into use. It might be saying, okay, actually alliancing of house builders is a way of getting new towns built over here. And it's looking for a number of solutions. There's not going to be just one solution. So the government is going to need a lot of experts to come together and put forward solutions and be, frankly, working together to come up with the answers for the good of the country, as it were. But then that will help them. But that will help business as well, because then they'll all get a piece of the pie.
Digital marketing and social media. Alex McCann from Altrincham HQ.
Hi, I'm Alex McCann from Manchester-based social media company Altrincham HQ. And my biggest tip for a practice starting out today is don't just leave marketing to the marketing department. Marketing has to be across the whole organisation. And that means getting your staff involved from every department or as many digital champions as possible, putting their messages alongside a consistent brand message on social media. So yes, that means LinkedIn for all. Yes, that might mean Twitter or X for all. Or yes, that might mean just contributing towards the Facebook and Instagram content in terms of photos and videos. More voices, more amplification, and people care more about people than they care about logos.
My trends and predictions for 2025. As someone who listens to a lot of podcasts, I really love this time of year. It's a way that I can kind of look at what I think is happening in my industry, but also in the wider kind of marketing world and business world. So here are some of the things that I think you should be on the lookout for. First up, account-based marketing, aka I guess it was what we used to call relationship marketing in the good old days. But very much it's about kind of having a B2B marketing strategy that focuses on specific accounts, target accounts, and their kind of key decision makers. So really mapping out who they are, what they do, and I guess in a way going a kind of pincer movement across an organization to really build those relationships. And now with AI and automation, you can really kind of focus on hyper-personalizing what you do and really get a much deeper understanding of the type of content and approach that you need to take to drive your business forward in the year. My next kind of prediction is around kind of, I guess, AI and machine learning. It's not going away. It was a standout star for 2023, and it still is really applicable. I think in 2025, it's going to be a lot more about kind of proven use cases and helping, I guess, really making sure it's about how it can help us do our jobs better in terms of analytics, in terms of leads, in terms of content, and I guess in terms of as well, campaign optimization. So there's a lot of kind of lots about applications out there and how you can use AI to make it better, not worse. I think something we don't explore as much, but we should do more of as well, is kind of video and interactive content. how can you get someone to kind of engage with what you do? So short form videos have been, around. So you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram Reels, but also even now LinkedIn's got in on the action in 2024. So I still think it's going to be short term videos, webinars, kind of stuff where you can put a face to a name. I think it's what it's all about. So how can people really connect with you, especially with the world of AI? There's also something we haven't explored in built environments. So things around polls and quizzes that you see in kind of more in the kind of consumer space. I think that's a kind of opportunity where we can kind of share more of our knowledge and have more of a kind of understanding of our audiences and what their kind of pain points are as well. So quizzes and polls, I think, is another area that we might want to explore. I think the thing around kind of climate change and sustainability, we can't get away from the weather, what's happening with the planet around us. And I still think there's a huge amount that kind of B2B brands can be doing in this area. How do you talk about sustainability without greenwashing and being, transparent about your performance and what you're doing? So I do think that's an area where we can build trust with our audiences and buyers. Influencer marketing is another area where I think B2B companies can really kind of leverage their industry experts and thought leaders and start to really talk about the issues that matter to people. And also it's a great way of amplifying your brand and credibility. So it's all about third-party endorsement, isn't it? So finding those influencers or micro-influencers who can really help you move the needle. I do think there's also a lot around community, building community, finding those kind of little ways of having private social networks and communities where you can support yourself, your followers, your customers, your future customers, your employees, lots of kind of different ways that you can kind of build community. So people want to feel connected. So find those ways. And of course, as you are listening to a podcast, I am going to say that podcasts, of course, are going to still continue to rise. Definitely in the past year, I've seen more and more firms reaching out to try and start their own podcast, considering it, and I guess getting into this medium of voice, which personally I love. So that's a great thing. In terms of B2B marketing, that's kind of where I think we're going. What do you see happening? I'd love to hear. Make sure you reach out to ayo@abbasmarketing.com and share what you think is going to happen. And finally, to close us out, I just want to talk about the Built Environment Marketing Show and my plans for 2025. So as usual, I have lots and lots of ideas for who I should be interviewing. But if you do have any ideas, do feel free to get in touch. I will hopefully try and record some interviews in person in a proper podcast studio, which is quite exciting. And I also want to do one of those kind of short, snappy, practical style episodes. I also might do a new mini-series, which will look at, I think, practice models, which is quite something that's interesting me at the moment. So thank you so much for listening to the show in 2024, and I hope you'll keep listening in 2025. If you've got any ideas, always feel free to get in touch, and I will see you in 2025. Bye. Sorry, I've just completely taken your script there.
That's okay. You also skip past introducing yourself, but that's fine. We can move things around.
Do you know what? I just didn't take those notes. That was really smart of me. I forgot your names. That was really useful.
Is this how we mean to go on? This is incredible.
It was like, here I am with. Thank you. Let's try that again. Thanks so much for listening to the Built Environment Marketing Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes, which will have useful links and resources connected to this episode. You can find that on abbasmarketing.com. And of course, if you like the show, please do share it with others on social, as it helps more people to find us. See you soon.